So I was thinking about light and how green is basically the middle of the spectrum, right? So in theory, you would assume that it's going to be the most abundant source of light, or like wavelength of light, since it's in the middle. And if it's the most common, then I was thinking it would make sense that uh, if green is the most common if green is the most common wavelength of light, then why are plants green, right? Because if the most common light source is green, wouldn't you want to absorb that, right? Wouldn't you want to absorb the maximum amount of energy? And it kind of got me confused. I was like, why are plants green then? And then, for that matter, why are they not black? Why aren't all plants black? Shouldn't they want to absorb the maximum amount of light they can? Shouldn't they absorb all wavelengths? And this kind of got me confused, and I was like, what? And so I looked it up. And basically the answer I got is, we don't know for sure, but the assumption is that it's to keep the amount of energy being absorbed constant throughout the day. And this explanation seems very likely to me, because once I heard that, I was like, wait, what? But then I was like, okay, wait, yeah, no, that sounds logical to me, because, you would think you would want to absorb the maximum amount of energy, but, you can only do so much with the energy. So you can take in all the energy, but if you only have, half the resources to do anything with that energy, right, then you're taking in this excess energy for no reason. You've got nothing to do with it. So it's a waste of your resources to absorb that energy, basically. And so you're better off just optimizing to keep your energy consumption consistent instead. And so since green is the most abundant wavelength, you can ignore a majority of that wavelength because you don't need all of the energy. So it makes the most sense to just cut out the most abundant wavelength and ignore that one. And so when there's low light levels, you absorb more blue wavelength light or higher energy light to counterbalance the low light level, right? And then as the light level increases, you start to reduce how much blue you absorb and increase how much red you're absorbing. But the entire time you're still reflecting the green. And it's not that like all green is reflected. It's just that the majority of the green is reflected. And it just depends on what kind of light is being, provided. And so if it's really bright, you don't want to absorb all of that energy because, like I said, you can't do anything with it. And it kind of, by only absorbing the lower energy light, you're absorbing less energy and it's keeping it kind of consistent. And when it's dark, you absorb, less quantity but higher quality, right? So it's lower quality but higher quantity, or higher quality but lower quantity. And it's like this balancing act that the plants do to keep their energy consistent, to keep production at a constant rate, and to work with how much, resources they have available. And this was really interesting, but it makes a lot of sense because basically it's balance, right? The plants are in keeping this state of balance throughout the day, and they're using red, green, and blue to do this. And I mean, this goes back to, you can use those three colors to create white light, as we know, which makes sense. And it's also how we relate the color charge in like chromodynamics, because it's these three colors, the three of them come together to create white or balance, right? So it makes sense. And this the plants are constantly keeping this balanced state, and they're just constantly keeping balance. And this aligns with just about everything, because if you look at anything in nature, as I've said, balance is basically a fundamental concept in the universe, in our world, in our reality. And so, you're balancing high and low to kind of keep this equilibrium. And like all of nature follows this rule. There's consumers and there's producers, and you can't have all producers and all consumers, or things fall apart, right? If, like, the reason why we have things like hunting season and stuff like that for animals is because if we didn't hunt the deer and we didn't kind of control the population, then they would overpopulate and destroy and potentially cause other species to go extinct. And so it's kind of this balancing act, because everything maintains balance. Everything's supposed to maintain balance. And everything in nature follows this rule except for us. We kind of ignore it. And I think that that's kind of funny. But it's just really interesting to see, like, once again, this balance shows up in a place that you wouldn't expect it. And just highlights how important it is to everything around us in the world that we live in. And so I just thought that that was really cool. And so I wanted to share that. And yeah, that's basically all I wanted to say. So, peace out.